In a dusty Texas town, a rich man decided to turn a poor boy into a public joke. He handed him the weakest, most broken horse anyone had ever seen, right in front of the whole town. People laughed, already certain of the ending. But what no one saw was the fire still burning behind those tired eyes. This is the story of Ethan and a horse meant to be forgotten. The summer sun burned down on Willow Creek, Texas, baking the dirt roads until the air shimmered. The town square buzzed with excitement as wagons rolled in and ranchers gathered. The annual horse race was more than sport. It was pride, status, and power, all wrapped into one day. The rich came to show off. The poor came to watch and dream. At the center of it all stood Charles Whitmore, the wealthiest rancher for miles. His boots were polished, his hat clean, and his smile sharp. His family had ruled Willow Creek for generations, and everyone knew it. Today, his attention was not on the fine stallions waiting in the corral. It was locked on a skinny boy standing at the edge of the crowd. Ethan Miller was 17 and already worn down by life. His boots were cracked, his shirt patched, and his hands rough from years of hard work. He had dreamed of racing since he was a child, but dreams were expensive. Horses cost money, and money was something Ethan never had. Still, he had asked every year, hoping someone would give him a chance. Every year they laughed. Until now. "Ethan," Charles Whitmore called out, his voice booming across the square. The crowd parted as Charles stepped forward. Behind him, a ranch hand dragged a horse into view, and a hush fell before turning into gasps and laughter. The animal was painfully thin. Its ribs pushed against a dull chestnut coat, its mane tangled and gray. One back leg dragged with every step, as if it barely remembered how to move. "This one's for you, son," Charles said, clapping Ethan on the shoulder hard enough to stagger him. "Now you can finally race like the rest of us." Laughter exploded around them. Men doubled over. Women whispered behind their hands. Children pointed. To them, it was entertainment. Ethan felt his face burn, but he stayed where he stood. He looked at the horse, then at the dirt, then back at the animal again. The horse lifted its head slowly, and their eyes met. For a moment, the noise faded. In those dark, tired eyes, Ethan saw something unexpected. Not fear, not defeat, something stubborn, something alive. "Thank you, Mr. Whitmore," Ethan said, his voice shaking but steady. The laughter grew louder. "That bag of bones won't make it to the start," Charles sneered, "if it doesn't collapse first." Ethan reached for the rope around the horse's neck. His hand trembled, but when he tugged gently, the horse followed, slow, limping, but willing. Each step felt like a quiet refusal to give up. As Ethan led the horse away, the voices followed him like stones. "That thing belongs in the glue factory. Poor kid never learns. Guess he finally got what he deserved." Ethan did not turn around. The shack where Ethan lived with his mother sat at the edge of town, where dirt roads replaced pavement. It leaned to one side and rattled in the wind, but it was home. Margaret Miller stepped out when she saw the horse and froze. "Ethan," she whispered, "where did you get that poor creature?" "Mr. Whitmore gave him to me," Ethan said. Margaret's face darkened. That wasn't a gift. That was cruelty. Ethan did not argue. He ran his hand along the horse's neck. The coat was rough, but the horse leaned into the touch, its breathing slowing. "Look at his eyes, Mama," Ethan said softly. "He's not done." That night, Ethan built a small shelter beside the shack and spent his last coins on a bag of cheap feed. As the horse ate, Ethan sat nearby, watching. He noticed scars on the leg and faint marks beneath the mane, not farm marks, something else. "Rusty," Ethan whispered, naming him without knowing why. The horse flicked its ears. Later, as the lantern glowed and the night settled in, footsteps sounded near the fence. An old man approached, leaning on a carved walking stick. "Evening," the man said. "Mind if I take a look at that horse?" Ethan hesitated but nodded. The man studied the horse carefully, running practiced hands along the scarred leg. His face changed. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. "I never thought I'd see him again." Ethan's heart pounded. "You know him?" The old man lifted his gaze. "Not as Rusty," he said quietly. "I knew him as Storm Dancer, fastest horse this county ever saw." The world seemed to tilt. And in that fragile lantern light, beside a broken shack, a poor boy stood holding the lead rope of a forgotten champion, unaware that everything in his life was about to change. Ethan barely slept that night. Sam Collins's words echoed through his mind again and again. Storm Dancer, not just a horse, but a legend, a champion lost to time. It felt impossible, yet when Ethan looked at Rusty, he sensed truth in every scar and every quiet breath. By sunrise, Rusty was standing in the crooked shelter, ears twitching at the faint sounds of waking birds. Ethan stepped outside, a bucket of water in hand, and the horse lowered his head eagerly. Margaret watched from the doorway, her apron dusted with flour. "That old man," she said softly, "he really believes that horse was Eliza Whitmore's?" Ethan nodded. He was sure of it. Margaret's face tightened. "If that's true, we need to be careful. Charles Whitmore never let go of anything without a reason." Before Ethan could reply, Sam appeared again, leaning on the fence with his hat pulled low. "Brought something for the horse," Sam said, lifting a small tin of salve and a bundle of herbs. "He's got old injuries, but old remedies still do the trick." Ethan took them gratefully while Sam walked over to Rusty, crouching to inspect the scarred leg. Rusty shifted nervously, but the old cowboy murmured gentle words, and the horse stilled. "These scars are from racing," Sam said firmly. "Track burns, shoe damage, maybe a fall. I'd stake my name on it." Ethan swallowed hard. So it's true, he really is Storm Dancer. Sam stood slowly, his eyes sharp. Truth like this can be dangerous. Folks will want to claim him, and some will want to make sure he never runs again. Margaret stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Why would Charles give him to my boy? Why humiliate Ethan with something he once treasured?" Sam looked toward the distant Whitmore ranch, his jaw tightening. "Because Eliza's love for this horse cut deeper into him than any wound. After she died, he couldn't stand to see Storm Dancer. Instead of facing his grief, he let it rot inside him. Giving Rusty to Ethan wasn't a gift. It was revenge on his own memories." The words settled like cold iron in the air. Ethan touched Rusty's muzzle. "Then he deserves better now." Sam gave a slow nod. "If you're going to help him, you'll need more than feed and prayers. You'll need grit and patience. Lots of it." The next days were hard. Ethan tried walking Rusty in slow circles behind the shack, but the horse stumbled often, his injured leg trembling under weight. Sweat darkened his coat, and Ethan's heart squeezed each time Rusty faltered. "You're okay," Ethan whispered. "We'll take it slow." But behind every encouraging word, doubt gnawed at him. How could this broken horse ever run again, much less race? How could a poor boy challenge a rich man's pride and a town's ridicule? The answer came one evening as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in orange and gold. Ethan returned from hauling crates at the depot, only to see a figure waiting by the fence. His pulse jumped. Charles's men sometimes came by at dusk, and trouble always followed. But when the lantern light caught the visitor's face, soft features, worried eyes, his breath caught. "Holly?" Ethan whispered. Holly Whitmore clutched a burlap sack and stepped inside the gate before he could speak again. Rusty lifted his head at the sight of her. Something passed between them, a quiet recognition that tightened Ethan's chest. "You know this horse," Ethan said slowly. Holly nodded, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. "He was my mother's. She called him Storm Dancer. She loved him more than anything." She approached Rusty, and the horse lowered his head toward her, breathing warm air against her shoulder. "He remembers you," Ethan said softly. Holly opened the sack. Inside were bottles of liniment, herbs, rolls of clean bandages, and a brush worn smooth from years of use. "These are from our stable," she whispered. If Father finds out, I'll be in trouble, but I can't let him suffer anymore. She tended Rusty with practiced hands, showing Ethan how to rub the liniment into the swollen joints, how to wrap the bandage so it supported but didn't pinch, how to mix herbs into the grain to soothe pain. My mother always said he had a spirit as gentle as the wind, Holly murmured. But Father, he couldn't look at him after she passed. Why give him to me then? Ethan asked. Holly's jaw tightened, because mocking you was easier than facing his own guilt. Ethan felt anger simmer, but Holly placed a hand on his arm. Don't hate him, she whispered. Just prove him wrong. They worked together until the lantern burned low, sharing quiet smiles and stolen glances that warmed Ethan's chest in ways he didn't understand. When Holly left, slipping into the night, Ethan watched until she disappeared down the dirt road. From the shadows near the fence, unseen eyes watched as well. A ranch hand loyal to Charles narrowed his gaze. Something was happening at the Miller shack, something his boss would want to know. He slipped back into the darkness. The next morning broke hot and dry. Ethan rose before the sun, feeling a weight on his shoulders, but also something new. A spark of hope. Rusty stood taller today, his eyes brighter, his steps a little stronger. Margaret watched her son tend to the horse with soft hands and whispered words. You care too much, she said. It will break you someday. Ethan shook his head. He needs me, and I need him. A week later, as the heat pressed down over Willow Creek, Ethan tried again to train Rusty. He led him around the circle, urging him to trot. Rusty limped. Ethan's heart clenched. Suddenly, Rusty stumbled hard. Panic shot through Ethan as the horse's front legs buckled. Ethan threw himself forward, steadying the animal with all his strength. It's okay, Ethan gasped. I've got you. Dust rose around them. Rusty trembled, sweat streaking down his sides. Ethan's eyes burned with tears he refused to let fall. You're not done, he breathed. Not while I'm here. But behind him, danger gathered like a brewing storm. For Charles Whitmore had learned of Holly's visits, and his anger would change everything. By the time the morning of the annual Willow Creek race arrived, the sky hung gray and heavy, like the whole world was holding its breath. The track was already lined with townsfolk by the hundreds. Children balanced on fence rails, women fanned themselves against the warm air, and men placed bets with loud voices and louder laughter. Most of those bets weren't on who would win. They were on how quickly Ethan Miller would fail. Ethan walked Rusty toward the starting line. His patched shirt clung to his back, his palms slick with sweat. Rusty moved beside him with a steady gait, his coat cleaned, his mane brushed, his eyes bright with life Ethan had never seen before. When they reached the track, the laughter began. Look at that skeleton. Should have saved him for the glue pot. Boy's about to be crushed. Ethan kept walking. He kept his hand on Rusty. He didn't look back. On the rails, Margaret clasped her hands together so tightly her knuckles turned white. Beside her stood Sam Collins, quiet but watchful. His eyes weren't on the crowd or the odds. They were on Ethan and Rusty, steady, unwavering, full of belief. Holly stood a little farther off, hidden behind townsfolk, her shawl pulled low to hide her face from her father, but her eyes never left Ethan. And then Charles Whitmore strode into view, wearing pride like armor. The crowd parted for him. He didn't look at Ethan. Not yet. Not until the humiliation began. At the starting line, Ethan mounted Rusty. The horse shifted beneath him, not in fear, but in readiness. Ethan leaned forward, whispering into his ear, Just stay with me. I'm with you. The announcer raised the white flag. Riders ready! The crowd roared. Rusty tensed. Ethan held his breath. Go! The flag dropped, and the track exploded with thundering hooves. The other horses lunged forward in a powerful burst, their muscles rippling, their riders leaning into the wind. Rusty stumbled at first, his back leg dragging for a heartbeat too long. The crowd erupted in laughter. But Ethan didn't panic. He didn't shout or whip or kick. He leaned forward and whispered, "It's okay, we move together." Rusty steadied. He found his rhythm, slow at first, painful, but each step grew stronger. By the first hill, they were far behind. By the halfway mark, the crowd had already dismissed them. But Rusty had not. At the second turn, something sparked. Maybe it was the sound of the cheering. Maybe it was the memory of hooves pounding dirt in another lifetime. Maybe it was Ethan's steady heartbeat pressed against his neck. Whatever it was, Rusty's ears pricked forward, his stride lengthened, his breath deepened. Ethan felt the change before anyone saw it. "That's it, boy," he whispered. "Show them." Rusty surged. The laughter faded. Then gasps rose. "He's catching up." "No, that can't be." Rusty gained on the last rider, then the next. His hooves bit into the dirt with power no one believed he still had. His scars didn't slow him. His limp vanished. By the time they reached the top of the final hill, Ethan could feel Rusty's heart beating in perfect rhythm with his own. Down the slope, the leaders thundered toward the finish line. Bill Turner's prized stallion was ahead, strong and fast. But when Rusty came charging down that hill, dust swirling behind him like a storm of fire, even Turner looked back in disbelief. "That's him," Sam whispered from the fence. "That's Storm Dancer." Ethan bent low over Rusty's neck. "For Holly's mama," he breathed. "For all of us." Rusty flew. He passed the third-place rider. Then the second. The crowd screamed. Nobody sat. Nobody blinked. Nobody breathed. Ethan and Rusty pulled up beside Turner's stallion. Turner's rider cracked his whip. Rusty didn't need a whip. He had something stronger. He had Ethan's faith. With one last burst, Rusty stretched his neck, his hooves flashing like fire, his breath tearing the air apart. They crossed the finish line. The announcer's voice cracked. "Rusty wins by a nose." Silence. Then the entire square exploded. Cheers, cries. Hats thrown into the air, people rushing forward to witness a miracle they never believed possible. Ethan slid off Rusty, dropping to his knees as tears mixed with dust. He wrapped his arms around the horse's neck. "You did it," he whispered. "You did it, old friend." Rusty, chest-heaving, pressed his head against Ethan's chest. Sam reached him first, his voice rough. "Boy, you rode with heart. That's what won today." Margaret's tears flowed freely as she held her son. Then Holly pushed through the crowd, her shawl slipping from her hair, her eyes full of wonder and love and grief all at once. "You brought him back to us," she whispered to Ethan, touching Rusty's muzzle. "To me, to my mother." Then the crowd parted again. Charles Whitmore walked toward them. For once, there was no pride in his face, no smirk, only a man breaking under the weight of his own past. He reached Rusty and laid a trembling hand on the horse's neck. "I was wrong," Charles whispered. "About him, about you. About everything." He looked at Ethan, eyes glistening. "Forgive me." The square went silent. Even the wind seemed to still. Rusty lifted his head, breathing softly against Charles's hand, a quiet acceptance. Ethan nodded, not out of duty, but because Rusty had already forgiven. And that was enough. Charles straightened, voice steadying. "Ethan Miller," he said, loud enough for all to hear. "From this day forward, my ranch is open to you and your mother. You'll have a home, a stable, a future. And Storm Dancer, Rusty, he will stay with the one who believed in him." The crowd erupted again, but Ethan didn't move. He laid his forehead against Rusty's and whispered, "We're not done, old friend. We're just beginning." Willow Creek would speak of that day for generations, the day a poor boy and a broken horse outran despair itself. The day belief became a legend. The day Rusty rose again,